Hey, this is Brian with Concerts That Made Us podcast, and you're listening to Pods Like Us, a great show about other great shows.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I'm speaking with Sara Desantis from the show No Fear Finance. Hello Sarah, thank you for being here. I hope you're okay.
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you're speaking with me. So, where did your interest in finance originally come from?
Right. So when I graduated from college, I was 22 years old and I had about $50,000 of student loans. And that's really where my interest started. I was coming out of college, I had all of this debt, and I realized that I wasn't going to have like the most wealthy career possible. I'm a librarian, if no one else knows that. And we all know librarians don't make the most money. So I realized very early, or very soon after finishing college, that I really needed to get a handle on my debt and also just sort of like make better money decisions as I'm becoming like an adult. So my boyfriend, who I'm still dating, he, just recently paid off his debt, and he taught me a lot of these things about paying off debt and, taking advantage of staying at home. So after college, I decided to live at home, and I got a job
Yeah.
working at the public library. I made about $15 an hour at that job. And, I was doing the math and I realized, oh, if I actually had to live on my own and if I had to pay my car payment at that time and my student loans at that time, I would have negative money in the bank after all of my bills would be paid. And that was a big wake up call. So from that moment on, I decided I wanted to learn as much as I could about finance and really figure out how I could get rid of my debt and sort of start being an adult and make better financial decisions. So that's sort of how all that started.
Are there any plans of going any further with that, or is it just an interest? It's not something that you'd probably go into more sort of financial advice for people as a job, perhaps.
Yeah, that's sort of maybe the plan. I'm studying to be an accredited financial counselor just because I want to have something, behind me, not just like a passion of mine. So when I'm actually speaking about these topics, people know, oh, she actually knows what she's talking about. And
Yeah.
with that, I've always thought it would be interesting to coach, recent college graduates and sort of tell them the things that I wish I had known so they could, get started on the right path, starting saving for retirement, these things that maybe no one's really talked to them about before. So that's crossed my mind. And I do actually teach a college course on personal finance. My last job was at the University of South Carolina Upstate, and I was a librarian there, but I also was asked to teach a course on personal finance. And that's also how, the podcast started, was I was already teaching this and I had some knowledge of teaching these topics. So I am teaching that class and I'm still teaching that, even though I don't work there full time anymore. Um, but I'd love to be able to like teach even more and reach more students.
That's great. And also, we'll just touch on this. You have a love of books as well, just like your father does.
Definitely, yeah, definitely that came from my dad. He was always reading when I was younger, and I have a lot of memories of us in the summer doing summer reading together. And my dad would always read the books that I had to read for, school summer reading, and then he would talk to me about it. So, Dad's always been a talker,
Yeah.
which is why he does so well on his podcast. But he would read the books with us, and he would talk to it about us, and we would sort of have our own little book clubs, and that's where it started. My love of books and everything.
Yeah, definitely. For anybody listening, Sarah's father is the previous guest, Blaine DeSantis. So, and also as well as that, you have because there's been I noticed recently a recipe was placed up on the Amalfi Media video YouTube, which was one of your recipes for ranch dressing. So you have a love of food as well. I'm guessing that's from your mother, Magda.
Yes, yep, definitely. So my mom, so while my dad did more of the reading and school stuff with us, my mom very early on taught us all how to cook and, help around the kitchen. And I'm really thankful that she did that now, like being an adult, being on my own. I know how to cook, which is not only healthy for you, but it's also frugal. So I'm not spending money on takeout and things like that. But yeah, I definitely love food. I love trying new foods. I cook a little differently than my parents now that I'm on my own. My parents don't really like to use garlic. I like to use garlic, and that's like a pretty big debate in the house. But yeah, I love cooking, and especially with my mom and her YouTube channel on cooking, it's just, food's a really big part of our family.
That's great. So the history of the show basically is, from what you were saying, you were already teaching students in college about these things. So you just thought some of these things that you were coming out with would be good for a podcast. So how did you actually get the podcast going and then actually bring it to fruition?
Yeah, so so we have Amalfi Media. It's a whole family adventure. My brother does a podcast. My older brother does one. My dad, my mom. We have friends. We sort of brought everyone we know into Amalfi. So I was actually one of the last shows in our family to start. So I definitely had a little bit of pressure from everyone to start a podcast. Just because I was like, I'm not really good talking on my feet all the time. I'm not really a financial advisor. I was a little nervous to just like give financial advice, but I found out that if I typed up my episodes, that really helped me make sure that I was kind of staying on point and like not mixing up numbers or anything like that. I don't know if you have this experience, but I tend to mix up numbers all the time, so that was very nerve-wracking for me. So that was sort of how the podcast started. Was that there's some pressure from my family, but then really just getting started. Nathaniel, my brother, he helped me set everything up. He helped me figure out what mic to get. My little red box is what I call it, or the Focusrite, to help me record. I just call it a little red box.
Yeah.
And then, he showed me like how to record on my iPad and how to edit. And that's kind of how it started. And I just was like, well, I guess I'll start it on a Monday. So if people, who are motivated on a Monday to listen to their finances and have that motivation through the rest of the week. And that's really how that started. It was pretty random. One day I was like, oh, I guess I'll record a podcast today.
So, is it fully scripted then, or is it just pointers that you have written down to follow and certain information that you need to get across?
I know it's completely scripted, the whole thing. So I typically write my podcasts the same day I record them. I find that helps me make it sound more natural, that I'm not just reading from a script. So I write it, and then basically after I write it, I read it. And it helps me like not make so many mistakes when I'm reading, because sometimes also when I read, I tend to like read faster than my mouth talks.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's completely scripted. And I like I said, I do that just so I am making sure I'm saying the right thing, because I tend to sometimes switch topics and I don't ever want to say the wrong words for finances, and like someone actually listen to me and take the wrong advice. Like that would be really bad for me.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds natural when I'm listening to the show. It doesn't sound 100% scripted. It does have that natural feel to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to write it like if I were talking. So I think that helps. I don't, I'm not writing like a paper. I'm just basically trying to make it as natural sounding as possible. So it might not always be the most like grammatically correct thing, but as it pops in my head, I just type it out. And I think that helps make it sound a lot more natural.
G'day, g'day. This is Matty C from the Astros Fantasy Football Podcast, way down in Australia. And we love getting to listen to Marv meet new podcasters from all over the world here on the Pods Like Us podcast.
So did you listen to podcasts before this, or is this your first experience with podcasts?
Oh, yeah. I definitely have listened to podcasts for such a long time. A memory that I have with podcasts is when I was around 13, I had an iPod, so which I don't even think are made anymore. But I had an iPod, and I found like this Harry Potter podcast because I was very into Harry Potter at the time. And that was sort of my introduction to podcasts. Was I found these people who I didn't know who they were, but I felt very close and connected to them. And I would listen to their podcasts as I was trying to go to sleep at night, because I've always sort of had a hard time falling asleep. So I would listen to their podcasts, and I guess it would just take my mind off of things. And then I would end up going to sleep. And that's still something that I do today. So that's sort of my beginnings of podcasting.
That's funny. You should mention Harry Potter, because it makes me think about the other Amalfi show that your brother Nathaniel does with Joey, where Joey's working his way through the Harry Potter films for the first time ever, having never watched them.
I think that's hilarious. Yeah.
So do I.
I know. I'm so surprised that he hasn't, because I feel like he's the same age as Nathaniel, and Nathaniel's only a few years younger than myself. And Harry Potter was pretty popular back when we were children, and everyone was reading them. So I'm surprised that none of his friends like told him to listen or to read or watch Harry Potter. So I think that's really interesting, especially for being such movie buffs that Joey hasn't seen that. I
know. Yeah, like you said, it's just so funny that because it was everywhere around that time, and it was perfect for kids of that age for watching as well. I mean, even we watch them, and we're not that age. So yeah, it's like people saying that it's the old thing of people who've never seen a Star Wars film, and you'll think, wow, that you've never seen a Star Wars film. It's the same sort of pop culture reference, that's got that sort of heightened popularity to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, took me a while to work out what I was saying there.
That's why I like to script mine.
Yeah, I used to, but it puts me off when I'm asking questions, because then I'll sometimes, when I first started, the first episode I did, I had a script and scripted everything. And then I found myself trying to stick so closely to the script, I was missing bits that were interesting and I should have gone more into. So in a one-to-one basis, sometimes it can also almost be a bit too stifling to have a specific everything written down to a degree, I suppose.
Yeah, I definitely think for interviews or like the way Nathaniel and Joey's podcast is, I don't think that could be scripted very well. Because I think Matthew's interviews aren't scripted, but I don't know if he mentioned this, but I know he works pretty hard on, or he used to script his Swamp to the Swamp, just like the political topics or whatever. And I think it's very similar to the finances, is where you want to make sure that you're saying the right thing, because people will definitely come down hard on you if you say the wrong like finance thing or political thing, and you're like, oh, I messed up, and that could be a pretty big a reason for people to be upset with you.
Yeah. So what I have, as you know, is I have a list of pointers to hit, or points to hit in a conversation, and then the rest of it is just whatever comes out is interesting, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the fact that you do two different shows a week, shall we say, that look at different things. So you'll have the frugal tips for one show in the week, and then the other one that you have in the week is about credit and how to understand credit and that sort of thing as well. Is that right? I think. Yep.
Yeah. So I do the Mondays are, I call them my financial literacy topics. So a little bit more like you're trying like learning something. And then the Saturday episodes are more they're more fun for me, the frugal tips. Because I'm very frugal, and that's something that I want to share with everyone, some of the tips that I have, because sometimes I forget how frugal I am, and not everyone is like that. So I feel like I should share some of the things I do. And then the financial literacy ones are sort of the more like, these are things that you should know. And they have definitely like a lesson plan format where, we've covered credit, like you said, and, this next episode, I'm graduating us from credit and we're going to move on to savings.
Yeah.
And so my Monday episodes definitely have a pretty they're pretty planned out. I definitely know like the topics that I'm covering and what order I'm covering them at, because I don't want to jump around too much, because there are certain things that you need to know before you really understand like these next topics. And it can be very overwhelming for someone who doesn't know much about finances to hear, I don't know, very complex topics about investing when they don't even know how to budget. You need to save money before you can invest your money. So, and that was my biggest issue with, other financial like YouTubers or podcasts, is they're too advanced for a beginner, but there's nothing really like for a beginner who's a young adult or even an adult. Sometimes it's very kiddish, and that's not really helpful either.
No, it's definitely interesting, and the fact that your shows are well, incredibly bite-sized, around 6 minutes on
Hmm.
average. You get the point across in a quick but very succinct manner. Sort of the most recent one, for instance, where you've explained how interest works, and how to pay things above the minimum so that you're paying off a bit more, and how that changes the amount that you pay off and how much you can save from doing that. I mean, I think that's great advice for people to listen to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope so. There's things that those are the things I learned. And I'm like, I want to share this with people. I think that's kind of my nature, is I want to share what I know, being a librarian, share the knowledge with everyone. So yeah. And I like that my episodes are short, because I think it's very hard to hold someone's attention on financial topics, because it can get a little overwhelming with all the numbers. Like, I'm not a huge number person, and if I were to listen to a podcast and just hear all these numbers, I wouldn't really process it. So I think like, how would I learn? And I learn in like bite-sized pieces, and you know kind of a like repetition helps, and then building upon the topics and having time to reflect also. So I hope that people like, have time to reflect on like last week's episode. So then for the new week, they have, oh, I remember that from last week, and I see how, she's building on this topic. So I hope that that point comes across.
Absolutely. I think so anyway when I listen to the show. And the frugal tips episodes as well, they're great, because even when you explain things like eating out or going out and buying food, that's useful for people, because I don't think that people sometimes think about how they can save money on buying uh, non-branded items, for instance. Some non-branded items are just as good, but some people will inevitably go towards the branded items, thinking that because they're branded, they are so much better than the unbranded. That sort of advice, I think, is very useful.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that a lot of the company, like the branded and unbranded companies, they are made at the same factory. So
Yeah.
when you think about that, they're almost identical. One of my favorite sort of like little facts about that is, like I like to shop at Costco, and they have the Kirkland alcohol, which is bottled, and I think is the same ingredients as, I don't remember the name now, but a very expensive vodka brand, and it's like a quarter of the price. So you
Wow.
can't beat buying Kirkland versus, why would I need whatever vodka company just because some rapper is advertising it? That's what I found, is a lot of rappers I don't know if you watch like music videos, but they always have like a vodka company that they're promoting, not subtly at all on their music videos. So I think that's really interesting.
Probably because they get paid by those
Yeah.
makers of that vodka. Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
And get free bottles at the same time, possibly.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and that influences people definitely too.
so how do you choose the subjects that you talk about?
So when I started, I basically took my syllabus for my class and I sort of looked at the topics that I covered. And I covered sort of, student loans, savings, budget, credit, and things like that. And I just sort of broke down my class into basically like little episodes, which is what I've done. And a lot of the assignments that I've done in my class, I've turned into podcasts. So the last one, the power of compound interest, that's actually the first assignment that I have my students do. But that's after, we've covered, what is like a cost of living? How do you make a budget? Sort of those things. And then I like to throw them into that compound interest assignment to show them like the good and the bad, like how bad is it for paying off debt, but also how good it could be to start saving, because they tend to take the class like very seriously after that. At first, it's like, oh, like, it's kind of a light, fluffy class, maybe they think, and then they see how powerful like saving at a young age can be. And I've noticed that they tend to focus a little bit more on that class, on my class. So that's sort of where my topics are coming from, is the class that I teach and just sort of expanding on the lessons, because my class is all online. So there's only so much that you can do online in an online class. And if the students want to, they can always listen to my podcast. That's like supplemental if they want to listen to it. But yeah, I just kind of like write, the topics down, and then I sort of break it up into mini topics. So when I came up with the credit topic, I basically wrote down questions like, what is credit? How is a credit score calculated? How to raise your credit score? What is an interest rate? I just kind of listed all of the topics. And my next topic is on savings and, different savings accounts that we can have. And I'm just going to do the same thing, just list it out. And then those will be all the episodes. So it could be 5, it might be 10. I haven't quite done that yet.
That's interesting. So, have you had feedback then from any of the students who have listened to the show?
Not really. Which is the only issue again with like an online class. I only get as much feedback as they give me. I had one student who did check out my podcast, and she's like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then that's like really it. So again, not super helpful, but I teach the class again in the fall. So I might ask them to give me some feedback, because I do want the podcast to be for students their age. But at the same time, I know like my dad has learned a lot from my podcast, which is funny, because my target audience was, college students, like Nathaniel just finishing college.
Yep.
But I don't know, my dad and we talk about these things a lot now, and he's like, oh, I really liked your idea about like putting money away for an iPhone. So like every week now he's like, oh, I put away my money for my new iPhone, because he's going to have to get a new iPhone this year. So I think that's funny. And then he'll give me a lot of frugal tips. So my next frugal tip on Saturday is one for my dad, and a lot of them have come from my dad too. So I think that's fun that this is like multi-generational like learning. Like it's not just for a beginner, because even someone like my dad's age can still learn something.
I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur.
And we're from the Spy Hards podcast.
That's right, and you are listening to Pods Like Us, the podcast that also has the Midas touch.
But that's the nice thing about the Amalfi media shows, is the fact that you are all, you're a family for the most part to start with, but you're all inspiring each other now and again. So one person will say something that will inspire that person to do something in their show, or invite. It's the fact that I think because you're a family that you're going to naturally do that anyway, inspire each other, and it comes through in the show and the family atmosphere that there is within each individual show as well.
Yeah, I think so. We definitely talk about everyone's podcasts a lot, and I know I'm always texting Nathaniel like, "Oh, you should watch this movie." And I think he might get a little annoyed with me sometimes because he has so much to watch, but he definitely listens to all of us. And whenever his podcasts come out, like we have a texting like group, and we're always like texting like, "Oh man, I can't believe you didn't like that podcast or that movie," or "Joey, how did you like this movie? It was awful," and just things like that. So we have a fun time with it.
Absolutely. So, what sort of research do you do when you're getting ready to record a show?
So that's a good question. When I start, I basically use a lot of the knowledge that I've already have, and I just start putting words to paper. And then as things come up, I might realize, oh, I need a little bit more background on this topic, or I want to make sure that I'm saying things the right way. So, like for the credit episodes, when I was using, like, let's say, what are the credit score ranges? I'm pretty comfortable with that, but I did just double check that I had everything right. And so I just, I Google, which is not always like the best thing to do, but I just Google credit scores, and I tend to like the like NerdWallet, CNBC, sort of more trustworthy sites. Like I don't like to go to just like someone's random blog to find financial opinions on, because it is more of an opinion than actual facts. So I always try to make sure that I'm looking at legitimate sources. And I think that's really important because there is so much financial information, and a lot of it is not false, but maybe not the best financial advice, because someone might be sponsored by something, or they might have an ulterior motive. So I definitely try to get my like sources from legitimate places, and just using those like basic financial websites that pop up are sort of how I start. But most of the time, they're topics that I already know a lot about, which helps. And as the podcast, advances, that's definitely where I think I'm going to get more research done, as the topics I might not know so much about. Like I don't really know much about cryptocurrency, so that's really not why I'm talking about it. So that's going to have to be something that I do a little bit more research on, probably, a few days before I actually write my podcast, and really understand it before I just tell people things. Because like I said, there's just a lot of not right information about certain things, and I don't want to give incorrect information to people.
But do you find that interesting, though, when you're suddenly broaching a subject that you didn't previously have that much knowledge about? Isn't that sort of exciting when you suddenly hit with something in, like I said, it's new to you, so that makes it different and something you didn't know before. It adds that. Does it add that sort of factor to it?
Yeah. I always like to learn. Again, that kind of goes with my love of books, and what my dad taught me is that, we are always learning. So I do love learning, and I love finding out new things. And I think that's why I like my frugal tip episodes I like so much, because a lot of the time they're things that I haven't seen before, or they're new to me too. And like the one I'm doing this weekend is on Harry's razor blades. My dad buys from them, but I've never really looked into them. And I was like, oh, this is actually not a bad subscription, because I'm pretty anti-subscription, just naturally. So it was sort of nice to see like a subscription that I would actually probably recommend to people. So that was fun. But yeah, I do like to learn, and then I also I do like comparing sources and like making sure that everything's accurate, and doing some like more in-depth research. Like I do enjoy doing that, which not everyone does. So it is fun for me.
Yep. For anybody listening, I'm sure that Sarah does want you to subscribe to her show, though, on all these platforms, by the way.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So they are good subscriptions.
Yes.
So how do you record the show, and then is it then edited by Nathaniel?
Actually, I edit my podcast. That is something I wanted to take the load off of Nathaniel. I don't really see my dad editing a podcast. His don't really have many edits anyway. So, but Nathaniel edits so many of Amalfi's stuff that I asked him, will you teach me, and I will edit on my own. So
Okay.
he and I spent like a day learning how to edit, and I do that. But basically, I have my little red box, my Focusrite, and I pull that up and I plug in my headphones, plug in my mic, plug it into my iPad, and then I open up, what app do I use? I use the Ferrite app, and I record my podcast on Ferrite. And then when I'm done recording, I unplug everything just because I'm a little, I know that like the Focusrite can sometimes like cause like shortages on like your computer. So I'm very like careful to unplug that like as soon as I'm done recording. Nathaniel told me that, and I think he might think I'm a little too intense about that, but I don't want anything to break. So after I finish recording, and I typically do my Saturday and Monday episode on the same day. I kind of like to get those sort of done out of the way, like on a Thursday. Ideally, I'd like to be a few weeks ahead, but I'm never a few weeks ahead. I'm always like last minute doing everything. But I'll go on Ferrite and then I'll edit the app on my iPad. And the way I record, because it is scripted, it's pretty easy. I try to like not have too long pauses. And if I have too long of a pause, I'll kind of bring that in, make it a little bit shorter of a pause. And when I make a mistake, I actually click into my mic. So it kind of makes a big sound spike. I won't do that here because it'll be really loud for everyone. But I click into my mic, and it's like a visual sign for me to see that, oh, I made a mistake, and that everything kind of like a little bit before that, I probably need to listen to see where to cut and like kind of how to splice everything together. And that was a trick from Nathaniel, which at first I really didn't want to do because I was like, that seems silly. And he's like, no, you want to do that. And I was like, whatever. So I didn't the first time, and it was very hard recording or editing because I didn't know where my mistakes were. I had to really listen like super closely. And now that I have like the little visual, tick marks of like the clicks I make, it's very easy to say, oh, this is where I make a mistake. Let me like really focus here. But as I have been podcasting, I don't make as many errors anymore. I still do, but not as much. But yeah, that's how I edit my episodes. And then I upload it to Google Drive, and then Nathaniel handles everything from there. So I think he does all of the other audio stuff to make it sound good.
So the show music and the music in the background, is that Nathaniel, or is that also yourself editing that into it?
Yeah, that's all Nathaniel. So he goes back and he adds in all the music, make sure everything's like stabilized or whatever. He knows what he's doing, and he'll just double check to listen to it. And he also writes the descriptions for the podcast.
Okay.
So he'll have to listen to it to make sure that he knows what he's actually talking about when he does those descriptions. And I think it's a good way for him to also like listen to my podcast. So he does all of that for me, which is great. And he found all of the music. And he just asked me one day, he's like, what do you think about this? And I was like, that sounds great. And then that's how that happens.
Is it Nathaniel that came up with the logo for the show as well, that's on the streaming networks that you see when you're listening to the show?
For No Fear Finance?
Yes, for No Fear Finance, yeah.
So we have a friend who's a graphic designer. So we asked her to make something for us, and all I gave her was, it's a money podcast for young adults, and I wanted to kind of come across as fun. And here's my Apple Animoji, which is the little picture of me. And I was like, you can use this if you want. You don't have to. That was really all I gave her. And I was like, I like the colors purple and green. And that was all I gave her. And she came back with this, and she was the one who added the sunglasses on my Animoji. And I really like that because the sunglasses are actually like a meme. And I'm not really 100% sure about the meme, but I was like, oh, I bet young people will know what that means. And I was like, it kind of looks cool. So she came up with that, and yeah, and that was it. It was pretty simple.
You've preempted my next question, because I was about to ask about the sunglasses, whether they were a part of the emoji that you used, or whether they were added post.
They're adding their meme. I don't know the meme exactly. I'm not really into the meme culture. Nathaniel is, and I was like, Nathaniel, what do you think? He's like, I love it, and I was like, okay, I love it too.
I have no idea what the meme is all about, so it's gone over my head as well. I'm sure anybody that's listening will probably be shouting now and go, "It's this."
Right. They can let us know.
They can. We'll come up with contact details for you all soon.
Hello, everybody. This is Ryan,
This is Avery.
and we are from the Frame by Frame King Crimson podcast, and you are listening to Pods Like Us.
So, what podcast do you actually listen to in your free time then, Sarah?
Yeah. So I listen to yours, and especially like whenever a family member's on, I enjoy that. So yours is definitely on my list. And
Thank
then
you.
basically all of Amalfi stuff is on my list. And so my dad's like snapshots, dinner and a dot, dot, dot. Nathaniel and Joey's Binge Bros, my older brother, Matthew from the Swamp to the Swamp. We have a new part of Amalfi, Chase and Cooper, and they do Mundane Madness. So that's now on my list. But that's pretty much it for now. I find that I'm not listening to as much as I used to before COVID. So before COVID, I had to drive to work and I would sit in like an office and I would have a lot more just like kind of downtime to listen to things. So I was definitely more active on like audiobooks or podcasts. But since COVID, my listening's just kind of gone down to the basics because I'm at home and I can watch Netflix a little bit more, or I just have like more things to do around the house. But since I've moved to Indianapolis, I have been listening to more podcasts, even like my own family's, just because I'm more like I'm alone a little bit more. Like I'm not like with my family all the time. And I walk to the grocery store. So I like put in, like my brother's podcast and it's like I'm talking to him on the phone or something. So that's kind of nice to connect with everyone still.
Yeah, I'll just say in passing that Nathaniel and Joey have already mentioned that you are a guest in a future episode of Binge Bros as well.
I am. Yeah, that was my first guest appearance on a podcast. We recorded that a few, like 2-3 weeks ago, and I don't know when that's coming out, but I've basically challenged Joey because Joey's a pretty big Netflix original hater, and I really like Netflix originals. So we sort of talk it out in that episode about why I think Netflix original has the best content. So it's a pretty fun episode.
It almost sounds like a crossover of the Binge Bros with obviously No Fear Finance and Mundane Madness. How Chase and Cooper sort of duke it out, shall we say, over which is the best.
Yep. Yeah, and it's definitely. I was not prepared for the how relaxed they are on their podcast because I had notes and everything. I was like, I came with notes, and they're like, "Oh, we don't do that." I was like, "But I have notes and I'm ready." So, because Nathaniel is like not really a notes person at all, so that was kind of funny for me because I was like very prepared, like my father. I have my notes and I'm ready to discuss these points with everyone.
That's going to be very interesting when I end up speaking with Nathaniel and Joey. Then, dear me. Because I have to have notes. Yeah, dear me.
Yeah, like before this, I definitely I went through your little list and I made notes for everything just in case, so I wouldn't forget anything. And I'm sure Nathaniel does not do that. So it's funny how different we can be.
It is because I'll send these notes to people that I write up, and some people, but when the call starts. Before the actual show itself, I'll chat with them and I'll say, "So, what do you think of the notes?" And they'll say, "Oh, we don't look at notes. We just like to go for it."
That would stress me out.
Yes, it would me as well. It would. So, what advice would you give to people starting out in podcasting?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to find something that you're passionate about. I think if you go in thinking that you're going to have like a trendy topic or that you're doing something that's popular right now, that you're going to make it, I think that's a pretty big wake up call because if it's probably oversaturated if you think that. So coming up with a topic that you're passionate about, whether it is popular or not, I think is important. Like I think like my dad's podcast Snapshots, like he's not really trying to do anything that's like super hip and trendy, but I think his podcast comes across super well because it's something that he is passionate about, because he does love history and nostalgia and, talking. So I think that comes across really well. Compared to some of these other podcasts that we see, because podcasting is pretty saturated. So to stand out, I think you just have to be unique, but it also has to be something that you're passionate about, because you're going to have to talk about it all the time. So if you don't like it, it will become pretty miserable, I think. And then another thing is to not overthink it. So when I first started, I overthought what my podcast should be, and I tried to be too specific and too narrow. And then I found that I wasn't actually ever recording because I was too nervous. Like, oh, am I saying the right thing for my target audience? And I was trying to figure that out. And I was like, I'm just going to start recording and not really overthink it. And as I podcast, my show will change and develop as I get feedback. Sort of like how Nathaniel and Joey's changed over time. They were trenches of knowledge first, where they basically read Wikipedia pages, which I still think is so funny. And now they found their kind of niche, which is, movie and TV reviews. And thinking back, I'm like, how did none of us think of that? Because that's really where their friendship started, was they love going to the movies together and doing stuff like that. So it's funny that that wasn't their first thought. So like over time, it will change. And then the last thing, which is I have to bring something financial to the table, is that don't worry about like expensive equipment. I think you can find very good quality things that are not too expensive. And I find that the entry of podcasting is a pretty low cost. So all you really need is like a mic and just a way to record. And it doesn't have to be too fancy. You don't need all these things that people are advertising. I get tons of ads about like getting these equalizers and mixers, and they look really cool, but I don't really need that. So
No, absolutely. So where can people find you and your show, Sarah?
sure. So my show is on all the podcasting apps. And it's Know Fear Finance. And then on social media, we have Amalfi Media. I'm pretty sure that's the handle, at Amalfi Media. And then my personal Instagram is just at Sara Desantis. So my first name and my last name. You can connect with me any way you'd like. And I have a Twitter, but I'm not really active on it. And yeah, just our Amalfi website as well is a pretty good place, because I've also started doing a keto blog. So if anyone is doing keto and likes to read blogs, they can also go to the Amalfi Media website and find that there.
Okay. I was just taking note of those so that I can put those links on the show notes as well.
Perfect. And I know you know our Instagram.
I do. Yes. So thank you very much for speaking with me today, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. If you want to contact myself on Pods Like Us, you can find the show on, we've got a page on Instagram and a page on Facebook. Just look for my name, Martin Quibell, on Twitter, and I might look at it every now and again on Twitter, who knows. But there's also a web page as well. If you go to the marvzone.org, and in the menu there, you'll find a link for show notes for all of the episodes of Pods Like Us as well. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
I can. Yep. Blimey. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Yep, that's good. That's good. So you've been busy then. You've recorded another show, or you've just chatted to somebody on another show?
I had a work call.
Oh, okay.
So that was fun. Because it's still about 2 our time. So, still working hours, but it's a Friday.
Yes, I was beginning to wonder if you were at the library working or something during the day, or yeah.
No, I'm still at home working.
Okay. Public libraries aren't open then, or have I got the libraries mixed up? You work somewhere else.
Yeah, so I work. So I used to work at the public library, and most of those are open now. I work at a pharmaceutical company, and I work for their library, and we're still all remote, which is pretty nice. I like it.
That's good. So how does that work then? Working remotely? I mean, people come in to borrow books. Do you? How does that work?
Most of our stuff is all digital now. We don't really have many physical books anymore, which is sad, but it's helpful because we have about 8 research and development sites all around the world. So everyone's able to get the same access to everything. So all of the scientists who need, all these journals to make medicine and stuff, they're able to access that. So they don't have to wait for a book to be shipped to them or anything like that.
Okay, because I'm still thinking of it the old-fashioned way of you go in there with your card and you find the book that you're after, and then you go up to the counter and you get the book or the books that you've been looking for, and then you read those books and bring them back and get more books. Or yes, but then again, I remember the old days of looking at microfiche on computers as well back in the day. So there you go. I'm dating myself there. Oh dear.
Right. That's that's like a skill now. I had to learn how to do that. Pretty recently, I had no idea how to use that, the microfilm machine and stuff. Changed.
It's definitely different to Wikipedia and online research, I suppose. Well, yes, it is. So actually, could have included that as part of the episode, really, because I was just thinking that that makes you similar to your father. Then I'm guessing to Blaine, because he loves researching, and I'm guessing that you're similar with that as well.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that lies until Nathaniel came down to visit me in Indianapolis, and I made like this long itinerary, and I did all this research for stuff that we're gonna do. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've become my father. Because my dad used to have these very detailed itineraries when we would travel. And yeah, I definitely enjoy research, and so does he. And Nathaniel and my mom aren't really into that. So Nathaniel and my mom are much more similar than myself and my dad.
Yeah, but don't you find that though with families where one person will be more like one parent and another person would be more like the other parent?
Yeah, it's interesting how it works that way, because I would have never thought that. But yeah, as the older I'm getting, the more I'm like, oh, this is something my dad does, and I do the exact same thing. Or sometimes I'll say things like my mom, like, oh, well, I guess I am like my mom. And when I was younger, I would have been like, I'm not like my parents at all, but
No.
I am pretty much like them.
Yes, yes. Anyway, every time we're talking about things, I'm thinking, oh, that would be so good in the show. Because it's touching on things like that one where I was talking about love of books and an interest in finance, and I'm thinking that you possibly got those from your father, from your dad as well.
Look, the books definitely, the finance. We definitely talked about money as kind of got a passion for out after college. So that's sort of my own little thing that I've done. But as I do my podcast, my dad.
So you broke up there. Say that again, Sarah.
Oh, so yeah. So the love of books is definitely from my dad, but the finances, I would definitely say, is more something that I found a passion for. We definitely talked about finances as a family when I was growing up, but not really to the level of like what I know now.
No.
And, I guess we can talk about that later about how I
Okay.
sort of became interested in it. But that's, definitely more of my own thing than like from my parents.
Okay, we'll get into the show now then officially. Okay, if that's fine.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Because like we both said, we're going into areas where we'll end up going into again during the show. Okay.
Right.
Was that okay, Sarah?
Yeah, that was perfect. That was great.
Yep. Anything that we need to touch on, or do you think we got all the information that people need to know more about the show?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much it. It covered all my notes I took. So, yeah, I think that was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I thought that was really good. Yeah. So,
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun.
Are you planning on doing any more guest spots on Binge Bros, or perhaps have a duke it out with those two in Mundane Madness one of these days?
Maybe that I do like Monday Madness. Sometimes when they don't say a topic or like a point, I'm like, man, they forgot this important thing about this one thing. I'll probably be on Binge Bros again if I come up with any topics that I want to talk about. But yeah, and I know Nathaniel and I will probably try to collaborate on some stuff. We've always wanted to do a podcast together, but we haven't really thought about the best way to do that. And he's so busy, it's kind of too much to put on him right now.
Yeah, because he keeps turning up on your mum's No Fear Cooking as well. Those videos all the time as well.
He does, yeah. I think he's enjoying that, so I'm glad that he's doing that.
Yeah, so am I. He certainly seems to have fun, and I liked that bit on one of the videos recently where the dog stole a bit of cauliflower. That made me laugh.
Oh my gosh, yes. That was funny. Babbitt is very like food focused, so he likes to be in the videos and see what he can't eat. But
healthy eating though with stealing the cauliflower.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been worse. It could have been an Oreo, which he's definitely stolen before. So a cauliflower is not too bad.
That's not bad at all. Anyway, thank you for speaking with me, Sarah. That was great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. You take care. I hope to speak to you again sometime.
Okay, all right. All right,
Take
you
care.
too. All right,
Thank
bye.
you.